they were like, well, maybe you should go to college first and then see if that's something you really want to do.
Before we get into today's episode, if you want to get 2 weeks of Service MVP totally free, get the 2-week trial of our MVP Club. It's a new program that we're just starting out, and you get 2 weeks totally free, risk-free, cancel anytime that you want. It's going to include video content. It's going to include the audiobook. It's going to include a ton of stuff that's going to help your business grow like you would not believe. So if you want to get 2 weeks totally free, risk-free, cancel anytime, click the link in the description. We'll see you there.
Welcome to the Service MVP podcast. My name is Joe Crisara, America's service sales coach. And we have with us one of my dearest friends, Dan Antonelli from KickCharge Media. Dan, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here.
What's up, Joe? How you doing, brother?
Well, it's definitely long overdue and got you on this podcast today. And today we're going to talk about brand transformation, how the branding, the sales equals success. Does that make sense? That's going to be the name of our show. Dan, I just want to start by saying, how did you wind up where you're at right now? How did you? I know it's not an overnight success story, but if you could somehow limit it to 5 minutes and give us the thumbnail version of how you got from where you were to where you are now, could you give us a little bit? And then we're going to talk about some of the transformation you have experienced with contractors. Go ahead and tell us first about yourself, Dan.
It's definitely been an overnight success, like 28 years of overnights. You know the deal. You know how long it takes. So I started when I was 15 years old, and I was really fascinated with hand lettering, pinstriping cars, and I was doing some signs. And I think the first actual service van that I hand lettered in my parents' backyard was for a plumbing company. I have pictures of it, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really how I got started. Is I started doing lettering on trucks, working with these small businesses, and I really wanted to be a sign painter. That was my goal. I got to work in a sign shop in Staten Island, New York. You may hear a little bit of my accent here.
Mm-hmm.
And I told my parents I want to be a sign painter, and they were like, "Well, maybe you should go to college first and then see if that's something you really want to do." So I wound up going to college, and I studied advertising and communications, and I found that experience actually was really valuable. It really taught me a lot about marketing. It taught me a lot about advertising. It taught me a lot about consumer psychology. So many great things came out of that. It also taught me how to write very well. So that, I think, helped me when I started writing books and started doing some of those things. So I graduated. I started working as a graphic designer in New York City, but I really missed working with all these entrepreneurs. I was working for a health insurance company, if you can imagine, producing brochures. It wasn't the most exciting line of business, but it was a good job. And I started the company on the side, like so many entrepreneurs did, working out of my basement. And I remember my wife saying, like, you need to have 50,000 in sales if you want to quit your day job, so to speak. So I was like, okay, that's my goal. I got to just do 50,000 in sales in 1 year, and then I'll be able to quit. And so that was really a grind. That was really hard to do while I was commuting into New York City, 5 days a week. So I literally worked, I'd come home from the train, have a little bit of dinner, and then I'd work from 7 to 1, 2 in the morning. And I did that for about a year to get through that sales goal, right? So I hit that sales goal, and finally I was able to leave my job and start. And when I started, I just had this idea that small businesses should have a place where they could go to get everything at once. So that was really my mindset, is like, I could do the logo, I can do their lettering on their truck, and then I could do their brochure. And at the time too, websites were starting to come in. And it's kind of ironic, as I look around here today, we have 30 employees here today. And that's very much what we do, is we provide a source for them to get so much of their marketing needs, but all of it drives originally from that branding. And that was something from a very early point on I was so passionate about. I loved working with logos, developing logos, and then integrating those onto all these different platforms. So it's been a crazy journey. We just hired our 30th employee last week, and I'm just surrounded by so much talent that, I feel like I don't do much anymore. Like, they just do everything because everything is I don't need to do anything because they just kill it for me. So it's been great though. It's
Right.
been a great journey.
Well, we do share quite a few clients, and I always say the absolute one-two punch that I know people say, well, how do I get my company successful? Well, first of all, I even see people who come to us and I go, well, I think you need to look at that brand because it's going to make it way harder for us to get credibility and all the rest of it. When I always find my job which is to teach people how to provide value after the doorbell rings is way easier when you do it before the doorbell rings. So, Dave, of course, now you have turned into a industry icon, Dan. It's like now it's like nobody goes anywhere without seeing Dan Antonelli speaking at a conference or all that part of it. What's it feel like now to achieve? Considering the time when you're starting out trying to make that 50,000 in a year, what's it? Can you have to pinch yourself sometimes? What's it like right now for Dan Antonelli?
I gotta say, it's a little surreal. I spoke at Tommy Mello's event last November, and for me, that just felt like almost like validation of decades of really a lot of work. So we would sometimes go to these trade shows, and nobody would come to our booth. Like no one knew who we were. And suddenly we're at this event, and it's not suddenly. I mean, over the years, obviously we've gained a lot of traction, but we were at this event, and I brought 7 team members with me to this event because we knew we were going to be pretty busy at the booth and things like that. And we literally had all 7 of us talking to people, and there were lines of people waiting to talk to us. And I was just like, wow, we've really gone from where not too many people really knew what we did and how we could help them to being recognized as, one of the best or the best at what we do. And that's just a lot of hard work that's taken to get there, obsessiveness, certainly with practicing our craft and being the best we possibly can. And also just the mindset of the people that we have here and what we love is the ability to change lives. And I think that that's ultimately what we focus so hard on over the last decade is knowing how critical our task is and working with the mindset that that responsibility is so critical and accepting that responsibility and embracing it and knowing that, hey, if we do our jobs well, we can really change the trajectory of so many of these companies. And I think what's happened is those companies have really become our biggest cheerleaders. So like we don't really advertise other than maybe going to some trade shows when I'm speaking at them and things like that, but we don't really market in a traditional way. And we're just so fortunate that I feel like all our customers, they really do our marketing for us because, someone will post online, here's my new truck wrap. What do you think? Or I'm thinking about getting this truck wrap. And, and if it's not done well, like we'll get tagged and, talk
Right,
to Dan
right.
before you do this or even read Dan's book. I mean, not everyone can use us, which is totally fine. But the reason why I wrote the book about home service branding is because I felt like, again, no information about it really exists. And then I just wanted people to have a resource to learn more about it. So you understand what you're buying, regardless of who you use, you are educated on the topic.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of times when it's very similar to my business, when people arrive at my door, like they arrive at your door, it's already pretty much ready to go. It's just a matter of getting all the details and how does it work, right? Let's talk about let's put the focus on where it belongs on the contractors that have made both you and I successful. What do you think of that? Well, let's tell some
Absolutely.
stories. Let's tell some stories because those are the real stars, right? Those are the ones that have done it. So let's talk about like I want to first start, but I'm going to put him in the front of the line because I know he'd want to be right in front if he was here with us. Tommy Mello and A1 Garage Door. That was one of the first. That's one of the first places that you and I really got to know each other
Yeah.
very well. I work with his team. You work with his team. Tell us about if you could tell us the story about meeting him because I know he fills up a room with his presence, and I know that you probably had to pump the brakes. Say, hey, Tommy, we're going to do it this way. And tell me a little bit about that and how that relationship has grown, and what have you seen in the A1 team when you first met him compared to what the transformation is now? Let's talk about transformation if we can. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think the interesting thing with working with Tommy is the idea of his mindset of being not complacent. So at the time that we rebranded him, he was like a $40 million company.
Mm-hmm.
We do work for companies at that level, but not nearly as many are willing to reinvest into branding. And
Mm-hmm.
Tommy had a vision of where he wanted to go with the company and how much revenue he wanted to get and how he wanted to grow it. And he knew instinctively, I think, that what he had wasn't going to get him there. Even though it had got him to the 40 million, he was just facing so much pressure from a marketing perspective that it was costing so much more money on marketing. How can I basically get it to be a household name instead? So I'm less reliant on Google. I'm less reliant on paid advertising, and I'm leveraging, these 50 or 60 or 70 trucks that I have at my disposal. How do I leverage that opportunity? And so I think the interesting thing is that he came to me from a place of not basically being complacent with what he had and knowing that it wasn't going to get him to where he wanted to go. And that takes some guts. That takes putting your ego aside. That takes, respecting the expertise of another person and putting their hands into that person. And I think working with him was easier than you would imagine. Like, honestly, like, I've worked with many big companies and there was so many layers, there was so much bureaucracy. Let me get this person's opinion, let me get this person's opinion. And basically, me and Tommy through text had the entire branding done probably in a week.
Wow. Well, what I've learned about you, Dan, is that you have definite boundaries when it comes to, you're kind of like me, where you say you'd be willing to take 100% of the accountability as long as you let me do it the way I need to do it. Right. I've heard many of my contractors I've sent to you. It's like, yeah, what do you think of these? And I'm like, well, all I do know is that every time he wins every time. It's so I remember it was the one where you had a polar bear in San Diego, and they're like, "This isn't going to work." It's not. I said, "Dude, this guy knows. So just go with the flow on this." And so tell me about a little bit about that. And also, it is like we have other clients, of course, but Tommy seems like the kind of guy, and he's worked with me the same way. Joe, just do what you do best. That's really,
Right.
I think, one of the
Mhm.
strengths of Tommy Bello, don't you think?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I look at some of our most successful brands ever, and those are the ones run by owners that really trust the process and say, Dan, what do you think we should do? I'm stealing your phrase, by the way. What should we do?
What should we do?
Um,
You can take it.
so
Yeah, we can
when
borrow
that happens, I feel like from a creative perspective, it's usually some of the best brands we've ever done because they're not trying to fit into a preconceived notion of what the brand should be. And I think that's a lot of times the biggest obstacle is they see kind of what other people have done, whether it's using the stereotypical sun and snowflakes or that type of fire and ice kind of look. And they see people doing that, and that's sort of where their mindset is that it should be similar to that. So then when you're asking them to do something that feels different, that feels contrary to what their instincts are, I get it. Like, that feels unnatural. Like, that seems weird, right? Why would we do that? But that's
Mhm.
sort of where it takes the guts to say, we're going to do something different. We're going to do something more disruptive. Because if you're going to build a brand that blends in, then you certainly don't need me to do that, right? And then again,
Right,
you're back to the same position that you're leaving, relying on Google and all these other paid avenues to have people remember your brand. The whole idea behind what we're doing is not rocket science, right? The whole idea is, how do I rent space in your head?
right.
Period. Like, you could distill it, you could distill it to that simple fact. How do I rent space in people's heads for free? And
That's
the
a
and
good
the
point.
and the way I can do it is if I can do something that feels like something they haven't seen before, and if I can do it and make them also feel something about who they're hiring, then I make your job easier, right? I make it so I control what they think before you ring the doorbell. And
Right.
that's the beauty of it. I mean, that's really what branding is doing, is it's having people believe something about you before you even get to ring the doorbell. And that's how you get the higher average tickets. That's how you get the better close ratios. That's how you get the better booking rates. Like I feel like this isn't rocket science, right? But that's ultimately what we're doing, you know?
I do have a question I'm going to save for you at the end because I
Okay.
know So probably a question nobody's really ever asked you, but something I have a feeling inside that I just want to bring that up. But let's move on to Ken Goodrich and Goettl, which is probably the most iconic brand I think I've seen. Everybody sees that and it's like, that's just beautiful, that brand. Tell me about how is Ken Goodrich the same thing? You would think that Ken Goodrich would be, because he's such a huge presence that he would kind of want to take control of that. But it looks like by everything I've seen, you must have been given free license to create what you want there too.
Yeah, we had the idea of the story that was going to be crafted about the boy holding the flashlight, and so we needed to figure out how to visually tell that story, right? There was going to be an ad campaign that would supplement that storyline, but I needed visually to represent that idea. So that brand story really had to be built around the boy and him
Get it?
holding that flashlight. But you couldn't just put a boy there. You had to have the right feeling with it, the right emotion with it.
Yes.
And so we sort of played off the idea of how Norman Rockwell used to illustrate his paintings.
Mhm.
And we initially, believe it or not, it's a kind of a funny story, but I literally had a neighbor who is 10 years old, which was the exact age that we wanted to be represented in the visual. And
Mhm.
so I bought him overalls and I bought him the basically the newspaper cap kind of thing.
Yep.
And we dressed him up and we did a photo shoot and he actually was holding the diagonal badge of the Goettl logo, and we had him
Mhm.
holding it because we wanted to look natural in terms of figuring out how to pose him. We get all this stuff done, right? And send it to Ken. Ken loves it. It's all good. We start the render process. And then at the last minute, Ken said, "What if we made the boy my son Duncan?" And I was like, "Ken, this is, information that might have been useful to me like 60 or 70 hours ago before we started actually rendering this guy,
Uh-huh.
this little boy." So he sent us some pictures of his son. None of them had the right lighting, none of them were at the right angle. And we had to sort of manufacture this pose of his son
Mhm.
Duncan holding the sign. And then we rendered it. And people forget that he wasn't huge at the time. I mean, Goettl wasn't a big company. It was a failing company when Ken acquired it and he turned it around. But that was really the most important first step in that turnaround was getting that brand, getting that story out, and having people understand what that experience would be like again working with this company. So you get that warm feeling, you get the feeling that they're not going to rip me off, they're going to treat me fairly. They believe in old-fashioned values, honesty, integrity. Those are all sort of the things that brand was really communicating.
Yeah, yeah. How about let's go on to our current new champion and in place order our visionary icon at Grasshopper Services up in Albany, New York, and you got Amanda Triolo and Kelly Osterlitz who runs that team and that crew. Man, I was just up there, and everything is Grasshopper, and I didn't really see it until I lived in the environment. It's one of the few places I have a chance to go to and really experience. I call we do a thing called total immersion. Certainly, I think I felt like the Dan Antonelli total immersion in the brand there for sure because they do so much to use that brand in so many different ways. Let's talk about your experience with Grasshopper Services and Amanda.
Sure. When Amanda came to us, it was right after COVID, had happened. She ran primarily commercial HVAC, and the governor of New York had shut them down. So now she's trying to pivot into doing residential. And she came to me, and the name of the company at the time was PMA Comfort Services or PMA Comfort Solutions, something like that. And she said, "I
Well, what
want you to."
a departure. That's a pretty significant departure there.
So I want you to give me a brand for PMA Comfort, and I'm like, Amanda, like I know what you are trying to accomplish, but I'm not going to help you if that's what you need to keep because it's not going to move the needle for you. It's not going to accomplish what you want. You can't break into residential with a name like that because it's just going to require so much money and so much effort to get people to understand that. And at first, I mean, she tells a story that she was disappointed that I wouldn't work with her. And I of course gave her the reasons why. And then she tried to move on and keep it going with the PMA, and it just wasn't working out. So then she reached back out to me. She said, "Okay, I'm ready. Um, I'm ready to change." And so we came up with the name Grasshopper for her. I actually came up with that name myself. Interestingly enough, I didn't know all the things about a grasshopper at the time, but she had really a strong focus on the environmental aspect of HVAC, and she wanted that sort of notion to be part of
Mhm.
the brand story as one thing. But we came to learn that grasshoppers can only move forward as an instinct. They can't actually go backwards. And so that became really a storyline for her culture. You know, forward is a way of life became their tagline, and as a company, we will continue to move forward. We will elevate our employees. We will help them move forward. We will help our customers move forward. And so it became really, really central to their entire culture. And so when you think about branding, yes, we created a really cool logo and a really cool truck wrap and all their wall wraps and everything like that was fine. But the thing that came out of it was really from a cultural perspective, what was built afterwards. And it's just incredible. I mean, what she's built and what she's been able to accomplish in only 3 years. She's coming up on 3 years in 2 weeks, and I
Yeah,
think they're at almost 20 million in revenue, or maybe beyond 20 million in revenue now. But to
they're
go
gonna
from
have
100,000 to 20 in 3 years is insane.
they're gonna have Grasshopper Day on February 1st, and
Yeah,
my wife Julie will be joining you there. I heard you're going to go to that event.
yeah, I'm gonna
And
be
my wife Julie, who's the president of our company, will be there as well. So you get to meet her and celebrate Grasshopper Day, the third anniversary, and together. I can't tell you a story though, and it's really interesting. I was there, and it was a customer concern that came in. Listen to this story; you're going to love this. You can tell this one at your conferences and stuff like that. She was a customer concern, and the customer was upset about something, and they were talking about some kind of a second recall or callback, and the customer used the brand statement. They go, he's like, well, you guys are trying to do everything you can. I can see that. That makes me happy. So let's do what you tell us to do, which is move forward. That's the forward's way of life. You got the customer said, well, forward's a way of life, like you guys say. So let's move forward and get this thing done. It was funny how the customer used the brand statement in at the end of the whole conversation. It's like, well, let's just do what you say we should do,
yeah.
which is to move forward. So it was interesting how the whole community was brain is the kind of been conditioned or trained on the way that Grasshopper moves in that way, right? So
Yeah.
it's a really interesting story, and really I see everybody there, and it's funny because even when the decisions I see being made, it's like, well, we do know we're going to move forward. We can let's not get stuck. So in a way, what it represents to them is that they're not stuck in certain things, and that's really, I think, you could probably speak to that, to the branding, which is that it goes beyond just like a logo. So people, I need a logo, right? But you can see when I went there, I could experience that depth of the brand. Tell me about that. Tell me how proud you were of those type of stories when you hear those kind of things.
I mean, I got to be in her space as well and walk through it and see all the wall wraps and everything that we've created there. And you see the enthusiasm, you see the energy of the people there. And, there's one thing that people I think that initially hire us don't understand is how the brand affects culture, right? So they hire us initially because they're like, I want to get a really cool logo and a really cool truck wrap design. And we do those things. And then they're like, oh my God, recruitment is so much easier because people want to work here. Like they think that we've got something going on. It also signals to the existing employees that we're not content with status quo. Like we have a plan on where we want to take this, and rebranding is one step that's going to help us get us further into the dream that we have about growing this company. So you see, she's really the embodiment of all of those aspects. And she doesn't have a recruitment problem. She doesn't have trouble finding people. If anything, she's got too many people that want to work there, because you walk into that space, and Joe, you've been in 100, you know, environments like that. Not like that, but you've been in 100, offices for HVAC companies, and I bet you've never seen anything like that. Ken's is like that. Ken's in Vegas is really on par with what Amanda's done there for sure. But outside of those two, I don't think you've probably been in an environment that has that same energy and that same vibe that you see there, and it's just incredible the energy that her teammates have, and as a leader, what she's been able to build there. It's just, I'm in awe when I go there. I just can't believe what she's been able to accomplish. It's
Yeah, I
impressive.
think the difference I've seen, Dan, is that I've seen contractors who have used you and fully committed to the branding, not just on the outside of the building or on the trucks, but when you walk into the building, it's Grasshopper. The brand colors are represented in every room. There's the Grasshopper is hopping off the wall in one case, or they got every single wall in every single office is representing the brand or the story or a slogan or something that is there. So it's kind of like, reminds me, I would say, the guys like Goettl over at Vegas and also at Amanda's place. It's like a theme park of the brand in a way. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So
Yeah.
I think it goes beyond the stage is okay. Let's get the brand for the company, but also for the trucks, for the uniforms, for
Mhm.
the inside of the place. Tell me how that has transformed your business and to continue, because after the initial thing, it's like, okay, we got a logo, and then it's like, well, hang on, we're not done yet, right?
Right.
Tell us about
Yeah.
how it continues on.
Well, even before getting to that too, I think the real interesting thing with Amanda is what would have happened if I said yes to her when she first came to me.
Mm,
What would have happened if I said, "Sure, Amanda, I'll take your money and I'll do a logo for PMA Comfort."
mhm,
Like, would she have gotten to build what she's built around that culture on PMA Comfort? And that's the part too where, for us, it's really important that we are always really taking that into consideration as far as doing the right thing. And it honestly wasn't the right thing for her. And I wasn't interested in doing it because I knew it wasn't going to help her. So we say no to people sometimes, not because anything else other than it's not the right thing that you're asking us to do for you. And I'd rather not cash your check delivering something that I know won't add value. It's just not the way I roll here, and it's not the way we roll here. But going back to the other point too is, sure, you get this logo, and now it's being infused. And how do you roll it out? How do you let the customers know about it? How do you let the employees know why you did it? There's a process that you have to follow. There's like a roadmap to follow to do it successfully. So making sure that customers know it's the same great company, right? Your warranties are still in place. We didn't get bought out by private equity. They have all these questions, and you've got to make sure you have the communication channels open to answer those questions. And then, yes, it's the uniforms, it's the business cards, it's the membership brochures, it's the wall wraps. It's making sure that anytime a customer is going to interact with your brand, it is consistently telling that same story and delivering that same message. And you could look at any single piece of marketing that Amanda puts out, whether it's on social, whether it's the brochure, anything. And right away which company is being represented by that advertisement and that marketing. And again, sometimes people get that wrong is they don't embrace it fully, and they have stuff that's the wrong font, the wrong colors, the wrong uniforms, and stuff like that drives me insane.
mhm,
but
mhm.
but I get it. It takes time to roll all those things in, but certainly that has to be the goal.
But I think the one thing that we realize is that the companies that are very successful with this, the owners do a great job of protecting the integrity of the brand
Mhm.
and having like I think I think in a way you go beyond just sign maker by far, because the fact that you got boundaries. I always say, here's a phrase you can borrow from us too. We have a service MVP. We say, I'd rather turn you down than let you down. Make sense there? So,
Yeah.
so so that's very similar to what you're talking. We have the same thing here. And I think that speaks to the integrity of what you're about to get. Like, yeah, these are somebody who they're not just going to take me on as a client. They got to make sure that they get able to do it their way. But I think that the owners of the companies that work with you see that, and it's like, you know what? I'm going to make sure that the brand is represented in a way that is the integrity of the colors, the integrity of the message, the integrity of the logo. There's no changing anything. It's like this is what we got, and definitely, I think that's. So what do you think about that part? You probably don't realize it, the amount what people get from you by example, and how that's helped them as well.
Yeah. It's funny because I become Facebook friends with so many owners after we do the branding, and maybe they'll post something that their social media person put out,
Mhm.
and I'll screenshot it and I'll send them a message and I'm like, this is the wrong font. That's the wrong colors. Just have them follow the brand guides that we set up for you. And they're like, oh my God, you're right. Like so like I try to do my best with that to make sure that, even littlest things like the wrong font that drives
Yeah.
me insane because your corporate brand guidelines have one or two very specific and deliberately chosen fonts that every single thing you put out on the street should be using. Do
Mhm.
you think that's why does it have to be that font? Well, it has to be that font because it was very deliberately chosen to match attributes of your actual logo. Like there's a thought process behind every single thing that we're recommending that you integrate. So sometimes you see that, or it'll be the wrong shade of blue or something like that. And I'll just, friendly reminder, hey, just make sure the next time you do something, like try to follow this instead and just give them some guidance. But, I sort of want to say, if you think of Seinfeld and the soup Nazi, well, maybe I'm like a brand Nazi because I really want to make sure everything is done at a certain
I would put that
standard.
on your business card, but okay.
Everything needs to be done at that standard because it represents your company. So I don't care if it's the smallest thing that's going out that has your name on it. It better be branded in the right manner. Otherwise, why did we invest all this money in building a brand? So
Well, Dan, I always say a great podcast starts on time and even a better one ends on time. So why don't we go ahead and just tell people how they get a hold of you and at KickCharge Creative and see how can they get on the wait list, if you will, to see about how they can do business with you.
sure. Our wait list right now actually isn't too bad because we've been hiring like crazy. So we're only booked out about 2 months or so right now, which is much better than the 7 or 8 months we used to be booked out. So we hired 7 brand developers. So we have 7 full-time brand developers on staff, 5 or 6 graphic designers. So we're much better space there. But if you want to get in touch with us, you can go to kickcharge.com. If you want to learn more just about branding your home service business, you can pick up this book. It's called Branded, Not Blanded. And you could get it on our site at kickcharge.com/books, or you could get it on Amazon as well.
Dan, thank you so much for being here, and thanks so much for helping literally hundreds of thousands of people live the dream of working for brands that have a meaning. And that's one thing I do want to follow up with. The very last, I had a question for you, right? It's like, how do you know when you look at something? Because here's what I can see. I think everybody else sees the same thing. It's hidden in plain sight. Like as soon as they see something, it's like that's Dan Antonelli. Like so, it's almost like a Picasso. Like it's like it's something. It's like that has to be Dan Antonelli on that one. What do you get that feel? What's it? What do you, when you finally look at a brand that somebody's developed, maybe one of your artists or even yourself, if you happen to draw it yourself or whatnot? How do you know to get to the point where it's like, okay, this is right? What's the feeling you get or the indicator that says, yep, this is something I can put my signature on?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's probably less Dan Antonelli than it is the amazing people that illustrate and develop these brands for me, but they all know what the brand should subscribe to in terms of the attributes that it must have. So we have attributes like legibility, uniqueness in terms of style, the manner in which the actual art is illustrated, I think, is somewhat signature to us. Very specific. Like we have animators and illustrators that worked for us that worked for Disney. Like it's a very, very unique skill set, but everything really has to be at a certain level in order for it to ever leave here and be put out on the street. And I think that level is indicative of what we're known for, right? So it's really sometimes obviously it's a compliment to say, "Oh my God, that looks like KickCharge," um, because they recognize the quality and the level of detail and the work that's put in to build each of these brands. And over the years, we've certainly had some things evolve in terms of styles, and maybe we do things a little bit differently today than maybe we did 10 years ago. But the foundations of what we do, especially as it relates to a truck wrap, were foundations of things that I learned when I was super young, studying outdoor advertising and studying billboards, especially. So the idea of how you integrate a mark at a large scale, how you make sure it's legible from a distance. So the theories behind really great outdoor advertising, especially billboards, that really has a tremendous amount of influence in our work today because it's similar theories, right? I've got only 1 or 2 seconds to see and view and understand and distill what's being shown to me and remember it later on. So, I think that's part of our signature style is really infusing those things that were so predominant in really great billboard designs, especially in the 50s and 60s. You look at the way they used to be designed, there's a lot of stuff from there that we really take into today.
Dan, thanks so much for being here, and thanks so much for taking the time to ignite the brands and make these things jump off the page, so people can. It's a feeling. I think you help people feel things, and definitely, I feel warm that you're here with me today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, Joe.